Good morning. And we today we'll be seeing something on capacity building. That was the main objective of today's class, as we had told earlier. And to move on. So if we see, we've been looking at certain aspects of capacity building. Okay, I mean, in the sense that whatever we've been looking at has had some form of capacity building spoken about, whether you realized it or not. We have been trying very hard to see what would be the effect of doing some actions. Basically, we have been seeing what would be the effects of doing some actions, right? So this is basically what I'll call as the work which we've been doing till now, and we will be trying to focus on how we can build on this a little bit more. So this is the objective of today's class. And if we go back to what I call as what we did in the previous class, we were looking at the need for doing all of these exercises. When I say all these exercises, to be prepared, or to have a policy, why is this being done at a national level? We are doing this for the simple reason that if we are going to look at the cost of rebuilding an infrastructure, the cost of rebuilding is much more than what we would have achieved had we just done some precautions or some preparation in the beginning of the project itself, or what we call as at the start itself. So if we plan, we are going to be able to do a better job. And the other thing is that we need to respond to a incident in the right way, because if suppose the incident occurs and we are not prepared for the same, the impact is going to be felt much more. And many times it's not the disaster itself which is going to cause as much problem, it is the post disaster problems which come. For example, there is an earthquake. It's not the earthquake itself which is causing the issue, because it's for a very short time. But what happens beyond it? It's not for example, I'm not sticking only to natural disasters. It's not only the industrial accident, for example, which is a problem. In India, we will always quote the Bhopal gas tragedy, as it was one of the most widespread and one which had a maximum impact. So when you look at, there have been quite a lot of industrial accidents, but what happens is, how is the community going to cope after that? So it is just that there are certain safeguards which have now been brought into place to ensure that the fallout of such an even if it's a chemical or some other industrial accident, some kind of what you call as response mechanism is in place. And again, we are trying to have a comprehensive emergency management plan. When we say comprehensive, right from the start, when there is an emergency to the point where the emergency is being addressed, we are trying to take into account the actions, right? And moving on, we are now having a framework. When we say structural framework, it is the structure of an organization. So in this case, we have the Ministry of Human Resources, MHRD, right at the top, and then it keeps coming down. We come down to what we call as the district level administration. So in the district level also, right at the grassroots, right from the grassroots till the top, we are having a structure, and we are also involving the community at large for managing a disaster. So this is what we call as a structural framework, where we have at different levels people with different responsibilities, all working towards a common shared objective, right? So this is what we mean by the structural framework, and we are looking at sustainable development. So when we look at any of the plans, we try to see how we can include it's not only all inclusive, it's also going to have the least, we are going to try to see how we are going to have the least impact on the environment. So again, like all of these are relative terms. How much effect is there on the environment because of an action, and how much could have been achieved is definitely the perception of the individual who's forming the plan. Okay, and then we also saw that we need money, be it for pre-disaster planning or for a post-disaster planning. See, for example, suppose you are making a road. The road by itself can have different qualities and it comes at different costs. So if you are going to make it, for example, less prone to being affected by a flood, then the impact is different, or the way you do it is different. I still remember one road in America which was done by a Japanese person. There was so much of planning done to ensure that the bridge was safe. However, what happened was when the flood came, the approach to the bridge was washed away, and the flood was so of nature that the entire what we call as the river itself changed course. Now, why I'm bringing this across is that when we are looking at the at a way by which we are doing the work, the cost of doing this road itself, the approaches and everything might have been much more expensive if suppose we look at it from trying to avoid a flood. But at any rate, this is not when the disaster comes that the money comes in. This is at a time which is much before the disaster occurs itself. Okay, so today's topic for today is capacity building. Right. And there's a little bit of the pen is working a little funny. I think you'll be able to notice it. So just bear with me. Yeah. So here we are going to talk about capacity building, which is nothing but trying to see how we are going to make sure that so okay. So we are going to see what is capacity building. Capacity building is nothing but the way by which we try to see how we can strengthen the infrastructure. So we are going to see how we are going to strengthen the infrastructure. Now, what is the infrastructure we are talking about? The infrastructure which is going to be with you in the event of an emergency. The infrastructure which is going to be with you in the event of an emergency. See, for example, all of us are familiar with some of the emergency mechanisms. So, for example, fire and rescue is something which all of us are very familiar with. We are also very familiar with the ambulance service. So, for example, we have now the National Ambulance Service. So, the ambulance emergency ambulance services 108. The thing which is very, I mean, like I don't know how to put it funny or whatever. When asked about what is the emergency number, still there are people who tell that it is 911. Now 911 is the emergency service in America, and for some reason we are stuck with 911 as being the thing in India. So we have certain other numbers for different things, like for police, ambulance, fire and this one. But so I'll suggest that we kind of keep our emergency numbers straight, right? Now moving on, we will see some of the, so this is some of the emergency systems which we have, and we also have the National Disaster Rescue Force. Okay, this is more of a central agency which is used in India for the purpose of what you call as taking care of disasters, especially natural disasters, right? So what are the ways by which like capacity building is done? This is again in terms of what we call as some very good things which have been done on an international level, right? So it is something where we train the people to respond in the event of an emergency. So for example, we may be doing this course, but when it comes to it, whatever is the thing which is being taught alone is not sufficient. Many times you will find that a practice session is of equal importance. For example, first aid. Till a demonstration was done by St. John's Ambulance Society, for me also, like, first aid was something which was notional. How was it actually going to be done? I think many of you may have watched that movie Munnabai MBBS, or whatever it was in Vasul Raja, I think, in Tamil. So if you see that movie, the moment the actor sees a patient on a surgery, he faints. So it is just that, when you are looking at certain things from a very broad outline, like, from a bookish sense, it might not make sense when it is actually presented to you. So for example, how to rescue a person who is drowning. You may be a good swimmer, but when it comes to rescuing a person, it's an altogether different ball game. So again, there's another thing about the fire, right? So if you look at what you call as when you see a fire in reality and try to put it off, it is not the same as what you have studied in theory. So many times you'll find that it is very helpful to go through or watch videos of how certain rescues have been effected. This gives your mind a point of reference or a kind of experience which it draws upon when it is brought into reality. So it is actually, it's a little bit of something where it goes much beyond training. So it might also mean that you will have to understand certain skills. So it is just that our biology, whatever we studied in biology, or whatever was the thing which we brought out in biology for understanding how to react or act in the face of a disaster, of a time when we have to give first aid, is not the same as what we are going to do when we are facing the disaster. So a special kind of training is required for the individuals, right? Again, you need proper information, right? So proper information on how to work. Okay, when I say work in this particular aspect, it is how to perform effectively a rescue operation probably, or a rehabilitation operation probably. One more very important thing is, you'll find that we'll be talking about some social and psychological aspects also. So sometimes when you go to the place of a disaster, the way you behave is not going to be the same as what you'll behave in another setting and scenario, right? Again, we also, now information is there, so that I can probably call as knowledge. How you are going to translate knowledge to a skill. So how to translate the knowledge which you have into something which you use is what I'll call as a skill. Skill is got usually by practice. So this is a way by which you build the capacity of individuals to perform effectively. End of the day, we are trying to get what we call as an effective performance by the individual. So this is probably the outline of what we call as capacity building. So if you look at it, it just doesn't start at what we call as the at a very low level. I mean, what I say is, it doesn't start at a low level in the sense it should start from probably the school, or as you grow at each level on how we are going to act, right? So you will find that we have got what we call as the organizational structures in place. We've been talking about it, right, from Home Minister to probably the Prime Minister being the chair, Home Minister, the Home Ministry being in charge for the whole thing, and the National Disaster Management Act, which takes into account a lot of things, right? So when we look at all of the this is the way by which we are trying to see how we can build the capacity of the individuals, capacity of the organization, in the sense that the disaster management mechanism which is available, right? So when we are going, probably the some of the key factors identified for capacity building are as below. One, we have to give proper training. So when you give the training, all the things which we spoke up over here is going to come into the picture, right? How various aspects are there. For example, we have tried to train you on how buildings are to be protected from earthquakes, right? How we can think about prevention of flooding. We can identify the areas in a manner that we don't construct the buildings in a place which is prone to flooding. So basically we have to try to live with nature. So this is what we call as training. So in training we keep doing something repeatedly. It's like, you know, what we do in math. So we can teach how addition is done, but to do addition, multiplication and other things effectively, usually what we do, we ask the child to keep repeatedly doing it, and only when it is done we are actually able to get something called training in place. Remember, whenever you read a book, you don't really become an expert. See, this is one of my favorite examples. I can give anybody, you know, like 2000 or 3000 page volume on how the Airbus or whatever is the whole that aircraft is about, or it may be even 10 volumes of 3000 pages. So even if you know the manual by heart, front to back, back to front, in any order, right, when it comes to flying the airplane, it's an altogether different ball game. You know all the engineering in it, you know the mechanical engineering of it, the avionics in it, all the computer flight systems, you know, it's everything is known to you, but you cannot fly the aeroplane unless and until you are getting some other skills. So this is what is meant by training. So probably, you know, like we can add the second point in capacity building as education. Education tries to bring to you all the knowledge which you need, but to develop the skill is entirely in your hands. So the other thing in capacity building which we have identified is research. So for example, in our institute we have the CDMM, which focuses on trying to see how disasters can be managed effectively, or the effect of a disaster can be mitigated. This is again before the disaster happening and also post disaster. So what are the things which are likely to cause accentuating of a disaster? So all of these things are being researched, and at the national level we have the National Institute of Disaster Management, NIDM. So these are some of the very important things, and probably the most other important thing is creating awareness among the public. It is also among the people who are stakeholders of a particular operation. Okay, so when we talk about awareness to all the people, we are in a very good position to build up the ability to cope with a disaster. Okay, so these are some of the very important things which we talk about. So training, education, doing a little bit of research, and then bringing in awareness. And probably we can also add a few things, like for example, how to bring the community on board. So actually it's very funny to write with the thing not responding properly. Yeah, so again we can also what we call as, you know, so as part of this training we can conduct mock drills. Okay, so for example, suppose we are going to see, you will find that the fire service people tend to show some things like, you know, how to escape out of a building, especially in colleges. They will show like from third floor how you can bring down the people safely. And in fact, you know, this is a very I mean, like in the course of this exercise, many people have had many they've had false certificates which they come and show to they've shown to some colleges, and you know, there have been incidences where people got injured or even killed in the process of participating in such drills, right? So but when it's done right, like for example in the fire service or the police department or the authorized people come and give the training, there's nothing that's, I mean, that's going to be really building up the building up the capacity, right? So yeah, I don't know whether you have any questions. Do you have any questions, please? Any questions? Okay, so I take it that there are no questions at this point in time. I will move on. Right. So what happens is, so we have talked about how we can develop the capacity. Now, one of the key things which we also have to see is what are the capacity gaps. Okay. So what are the areas where we are not effectively ready? For example, I'm sure that we were not prepared for the pandemic. At least, see, for now, epidemics like malaria, cholera are all being taken care of very effectively by the governments. However, this pandemic in the form of the coronavirus was something which we really did not expect it to be. Okay, so we need to, so we have on one side we are building capacity. In other places, there are certain places where there are gaps in the preparation of the being ready. So these are some of the things which we need to look at. So typically what happens is, experts probably from NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, or some other places, they can come and see where we lack the skills, right? The other thing is, very important thing is, identifying target groups. So what is the meaning of this statement? See, for example, when we look at a group of people, their way of responding to an incident may be different when compared to another group, right? See, for example, if you are trying to train probably children of today, they are very much like attracted probably to mobile and some other things. And other important thing is that the attention span of people has reduced. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, that I leave it to the I'm not going to discuss on that. But one thing is certain, that people have started to have very shortened attention spans. Now, my personal take is that people are not in a position to what we call as critically analyze. So somebody says something, they'll rather take it at face value, thinking that such a person is an expert, rather than doing their own research. So this kind of brings down creativity. But in any case, the main thing is that in how are you going to effectively showcase disaster to people? See, for example, if suppose you're going to show very horrible pictures to very young children, they are not going to be able to digest it, literally speaking. So how is it that you're going to present it to them in a acceptable manner? So this is a very important thing which we need to see. Again, the cultural impact of impact on a person to perceive and to react to some what you call as an event is also very different. Okay, so these are some of the very general terms which we try to do. So some of the ways by which we have training programs is by in fact there is a training program which is conducted by NIDM, which is what I call as like a MOOC course. They got the resources, you can view the resources at your own speed and then go. So actually this becomes a web-based training which is now very convenient for many people. They also conduct some face-to-face training for people who are interested, and typically what we try to do is that we try to make sure that the typically the top level people are taken into these kind of face-to-face discussions, so that they can take it down the line to the people who are under them. So many other things are there. See, for example, the distance education mode is also another thing which is being adopted, but this is all specific to NIDM. Okay, this is specific to NIDM. We are talking only about this because this is the very important thing which is this is one of the important agencies which conduct the programs. And the other very important thing probably is they have programs for engineers and architects. So now I somehow strongly feel that when we say engineers, it is not only the civil engineers who are going to be the people, but it's also the others who can play a role in bringing out a change. See, for example, there was a amphibian scooter which was brought out by some mechanical engineers, which can go both in the both on water as well as on land, especially to rescue people. So this is probably what we call as a very important. This is probably an important contribution by an engineering community. Again, the tracking of many of the floods and other things are happening now, which is again which we cannot say like it was only the part of one group of engineers. So it's like a collaborative and a place where all of us have a role and all of us can take up a responsibility in bringing out an improvement in this field. Okay, so basically if you look at the whole thing, like each state has its own disaster management institute. For example, if you look at Tamil Nadu, so NIDM is the central one. Okay, so NIDM is more like coordinating among all these among all the stakeholders at a very high level. NIDM also is part of what you call as mini consultation and it tries to tell people how to go about a lot of the disasters. So in Tamil Nadu, for example, I mean not for example, it is the Anna Institute of Management. Okay, so they call it AIM. Okay, this is in TN. Anna Institute of Management is the state level player who looks after the disaster management programs. Okay, so if suppose you please go ahead and see in your own state what is the disaster management center. Okay, so this is the disaster management center for Tamil Nadu. So if suppose anybody I mean like if suppose you see what is at every state level you are having some kind of mechanism in place, and yeah, it will be probably useful if you know what is your own state training. I mean like what is the thing which your state looks at. Okay, now in addition to this, we already spoke about the NDRF. Okay, NDRF can be probably used to help you guys to, I mean like if suppose you are on an organization, maybe a factory, you can ask these people to help give the training. Okay, so these people are almost like in an army level type of what you call as hierarchy which they have, and you can see that they have battalions, they got various places where they have camps, and they can be deployed strategically and very quickly to places where we find that there is disaster. So if you look at in terms of so this is one area where we are building up capacity or capability. So the NDRF is a team which is going to look after disaster management. So we have some capacity to what we call as we have a trained pool of people who add to the capacity to be mitigators of a disaster or help in managing the disaster. So in addition, probably these are some of the other agencies which are also part of it. For example, the border security force. So these people will also be what we call as the responders in the event of a of an emergency. So these responders, then we have the what we call as the CRPF, okay, Central Reserve Police Force, and for each of these people also they have their own instructors. So probably the NDRF is going to help them, and maybe with the National Institute of Disaster Management. Okay, then you also have the CISF. Okay, then you have things like the NCC or NSS and other people who can also be responders, to whom we can have what you call as who can be brought in, and maybe like the army also to a very large extent. But moving on, one very important thing is probably the community. So for example, maybe at school level, many of you may have had some kind of disaster management programs. This is particularly what you call as important in places where we expect what you call as disasters to take place, where we expect disasters to take place, that this comes into a very big picture, right? So we have this the NDRF with these people as responders. We have the community, probably the fire service, the local police force, and so on and so forth, which who are all coming to what you call as the to respond to disasters. Okay, so this is probably what we call as the very big place by which we try to build the disaster management capability and capacity. Okay, now if you look at Indian schools, okay, especially at school level, the syllabus in CBSE tries to include from 8th standard onwards from 8th standard onwards they are going to have what is called as some kind of disaster management included in the syllabus. Okay, so probably we are also trying to, we are not making this as a very compulsory paper, but we try to make all of the people, especially the stakeholders, aware that there is a disaster management mechanism in place. You can get probably trained by yourself in some area which you would like to be contributors. You are also made aware that you can engineer a solution so that in the face of a disaster you are not going to be you are not going to feel left out. Okay, so when we look at it in a very broad sense, the way the infrastructure is being put up, the way the awareness and training is being given to the different stakeholders, all of this is going to make a very big difference and a very positive impact probably in the society at large. Okay, so basically it all boils down to education. Please remember that knowledge and skill are different, right? So we may teach you that earthquakes can be prevented by designing a building, right? This is the knowledge which you have, but to develop the skill you need to keep designing buildings so that the buildings can become safe against earthquakes. Probably it might not be of very great importance to non-civil engineers, but they can at least be aware that something is possible to be done. Again, when it comes to first aid and other things, you may know, if there is a broken bone, do this, etc. But when a person is actually suffering in front of you with a broken arm or leg, how is it that you are going to respond is the skill which you acquire. You may be knowing about all the different kinds of fire extinguishers, A, B, C, D, great, but when you are faced with the fire, how you are going to use the extinguisher is going to be the sum of all your experiences. It might be watching videos on how something was being done. It might be where you saw firemen put out fire in front of your eyes, or it might be that you have yourself seen a fire and then you understand how you can put the fire out. So these are all some of the things which we talk about, and I will ask you to probably go through one of the videos which I made of fire. I was also sharing one of the experiences with fire in one of my previous classes, and what was my experience was based on watching a video. So the same video I had shared with the class. I will share that link to that video to you guys, so please go through that. Probably it will help you also and save you a lot of grief at some point of time or other. So basically today we've been looking at how to build the capacity, and we saw how India has a mechanism in place for training, and this is all an outcome of the the National Disaster Management Act 2005. So do you have any questions, please? if you don't have questions, we will move on to the we will stop now, and we will be looking at some of the other aspects of disaster management, like how we can probably yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just let me just open the syllabus. Yes. So we will be seeing probably some of the aspects of, yeah, let me just zoom it a little. So essentially we've been looking at mitigation of disaster, preparedness, and to a large extent, like we are touching between response and recovery. But one thing you will be able to see, India has also a very comprehensive emergency management system in place. So sometimes, because you are not seeing it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It means that it is very effective. So that's why you are not able to probably see it, right? So whatever is the principle of disaster management which you studied earlier, let us try and put it to use. Okay. So any questions, please? Right. Yes, please. Yes, Pallav.
Sir, when you will be sharing the rubrics of NGO?
It has not been shared, huh? I thought it was already
I
opened.
can't find on Moodle.
Huh? Uh-huh. Okay, I will then share it with you all today itself. I thought that it has already been opened because the date was, I mean, like you wanted to submit it on a much later date. I just thought that it was fine, right? So anyway, let me have a look at it. Thanks for reminding, Pallav. Okay, guys, whatever we have done in this till today, let us have a quiz on Tuesday. Okay, so we'll be sharing with you all the past video links also of this past few days, and let us start preparing. Okay, because to be honest, I'm very disappointed with your CAT performance. Okay, so in case, like I don't know, like what or why the performance has been so bad, because to be honest, many of the things are only what you call as application of the mind. Okay, so maybe you need more practice. So we will also see how we can start to practice for your term end, because I don't know what would be the mode of term end, because, and one more very important thing, there's been a change in the policy for CAT 2. MCQs are not going to be allowed for CAT 2. Okay, so we will need to rediscuss our class the pattern. So it's already 9:50. Guys, we will meet on Saturday. I think it is Monday timetable. Am I right? Saturday?
Sir, Friday itself.
Are you sure it's Friday? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If it is, somehow in my mind it's Monday timetable. If it is Monday, we will meet at 11 o'clock. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Again, I have one more request. So suppose you guys have any what you call as suggestions on how you, I mean, like if suppose you need much more information, or what is it that you would like to have in addition, please let me know. We'll see how we can improve this thing, because I'm frankly I want to see all of you score in this paper. So thanks a lot for joining, and yeah, we'll meet again either on Monday or on Saturday, depending on the timetable. So bye for now. Yes, Rushika.
So what's the time duration for cat
I again don't know. There's no information on that. We only got a what you call as a indication that it will be it will not be MCQs, and we are supposed to give, like, for every 20 students a different question paper. So I mean, so if you, so please excuse me. Honestly, I don't have any clue on that one. Okay. So once we get some clarity, I'll let you know. I mean, like, we will put it off, and then I will again get it from you. I will not get the information on half information. I mean, like, half instruction. Any other questions? So guys, thanks a lot for joining.